To hold on to this belief even in the midst of so many problems visible in the world around us. To do so, however, requires a willingness not to look for somewhere to place the blame, but to take it, to look at the world as we see it, and admit, as the cardinal in the film, that thus have we made the world, to recognize the vast difference between the world as it existed at the beginning and the world as it has become, and to mourn the tragic nature of the change. To acknowledge, in a word, the mystery of sin. In 1946, the National Catechetical Congress of the United States received a radio address from Pope Pius XII, who said to them, "Perhaps the greatest sin in the world today is that people have begun to lose the sense of sin." Remember, this was right at the end of World War II, with all of the atrocities and loss of life that war brought with it. At the beginning of the Cold War, which led to so many evils in the second half of the 20th century. There were plenty of sins that the Holy Father could have pointed out as the worst or greatest sin in the world. But his identification of the greatest sin as losing the sense of sin reminds us that once we forget the true nature of right and wrong, there is nothing to stop any other evils from occurring, that a fundamental understanding of the reality of sin is the root of all of our morality, and that to misunderstand it leaves us without anything to guide us. Some 40 years later, Pope John Paul II, in his encyclical on reconciliation and penance, defined the sense of sin which Pope Pius XII had alluded to. The Holy Father calls it a fine sensitivity and an acute perception of the seeds of death contained in sin, as well as a sensitivity and acuteness of perception for identifying the seeds of sin in the 1,000 guises under which sin shows itself. We must acknowledge right at the beginning that sin itself is a deadly thing, and as the Holy Father says, it is sneaky and subtle. It comes in 1,000 guises. Many types of temptation face us every day. Many types of sin affect the world around us. The sense of sin, the Holy Father continues, is linked to the sense of God and can never be eliminated completely, but it can be deadened or numbed, and the Holy Father identifies several things which can make this happen. First of all, secularism, a post-Christian attitude which takes God out of daily life and out of discussions of morality. If we take out our relationship with God, then we take out sin, which is a violation of our relationship with Him. Secondly, a misapplication of the social sciences and over-psychologizing of sin into simply feelings of guilt or a lack of proper adjustment to modern ways of thinking and acting. Finally, the Holy Father says, historical relativism can deaden our sense of sin. We fall victim to a chronological chauvinism, reduce sin to particular hang-ups of a certain primitive community, and forget that simply advancing in time does not necessarily mean advancing in understanding. Finally, the Holy Father concludes, the sense of sin disappears when, as can happen in the education of youth, in the mass media, and even in education within the family, it is wrongly identified with a morbid feeling of guilt or with the mere transgression of legal norms and precepts. It is easy to reject right and wrong if we reduce it in this way, and give ourselves permission to get over our guilty feelings. The problem is, without a relationship with the lawgiver, with God who explains His plan for us, we have no reason to keep the law, and we miss the importance of sin as an indicator of our relationship with God. So to understand sin, to recapture the sense of sin which can guide us in our human life, first we must work on a definition of sin that avoids these pitfalls and misunderstandings. A proper definition is necessary if we will properly recognize the significance of sin. The Catechism of the Catholic Church provides us with a basic framework for understanding sin. First, the Catechism says sin is disobedience, and it quotes St. Augustine, who identified sin as an utterance, a deed, or a desire contrary to the eternal law. Here is a very basic starting point. Most people would understand sin as breaking the law of God, and in this regard, we usually think of